Hello guys, and welcome to this awesome video, because we're now going to be looking at the two-player starter for Stalingrad from Flames of War. So Freddy and I are going to open this box, and we're going to talk about all the awesome stuff that's in this one, because
awesomeness.
It has tanks. It has tanks in it, guys. Who would have thought that a Flames of War game would have tanks in it?
And these are retooled. These aren't just any tanks. These are retooled tanks.
So here we have the box. And I adore all the art that Flames of War is doing at the minute. And on the back, you can see our content. So we have one T-34, one KV-1, one Valentine for the Russians, and for the Germans, one Panzer IV and one Panzer III. Plus all the
cards,
all the paperwork that's required. So let's just do that.
It's like Christmas and birthday rolled into one.
Let's just make a mess.
Smell that.
Smell that. Smell that new plastic.
Oh, that's what I love about unboxing stuff.
It's that first moment once it's out of the
yeah.
shrink wrap. Yeah.
It's like certain companies, when people do stuff out of MDF.
Yeah.
And you leave it lying around. I use the bits I haven't used as car freshener. Just hang them up behind the mirror. But yeah.
You're admitting to how sad you are.
I am.
Right. Let's figure out where we want to start. Let's start with the Start Here booklet. So I'll get that under camera for you. So the Start Here is basically construction of each of the models plus the stat cards, how to set out the table, what the stats do, and basically takes you through how to play. So a little basic guide as to how to play.
These are actually quite good because, especially as an entry level, you can open the box, and that's what I found when we first started doing these. I thought, how cool is that? Because rather than suddenly you're flicking through the rulebook and trying to get it, this just gets you up and running with a very quick game to give you the basic mechanics while you're gluing the stuff together.
Yeah. The next important thing is this booklet, and this is the Flames of War. This is the actual rule book, right?
Yes.
This is the rule book for 42-43 period, yeah?
Yeah.
So this, I'll see which camera I want to chuck it under. I'll chuck it under this one. So it's a smaller book. It's an A5 sheet, and it goes through everything you need for rules, mission types, special rules, all that sort of stuff, with a focus on the sort of 42-43 period, which is all your mid-war stuff.
Yeah.
So once you're done with this booklet, you'd be moving on to this to get your expanded rules and your more detailed stuff.
I mean, if you want a lot of the other fluff, we've got the hardback, but these are ideal to stick into your bag with your minis.
Yeah. And
you can leave it in there with your dice, take it down to the club, and if there's something you're not quite sure of, you can quickly whip the book out, and away you go.
Yeah. Also in this set, we get some terrain items as well. Again, the 2D card terrain that we're very familiar with Flames of War.
Yeah.
Particularly for the starter sets.
Here's Oladipo for the lead.
For those of you that have seen me at some of the shows when we've played tanks, this is the same, roughly the same kind of terrain with card. You can use this on a train. Yeah. I've played on trains going to someone's house to play a large Flames of War game, and you can stick this stuff with a small fold-out board on the table on the train, put the terrain out, and with a couple of tanks each, and some infantry stands, you can have a fairly good game on a train.
And get very weird looks off the conductors.
Yeah, yeah. Nobody's actually asked to join in yet, but
we'll get there. Yeah. So from there, we'll just continue with the paperwork, because we now have the unit cards here as well, and I have to admit, I like that a lot. So on the back of let me see, which ones are these? Movement orders. So these are basically the moves and whatnot, and here's some orders.
Yeah.
But on the back you have the beautiful artwork again, which is great.
I mean, they're quite handy, because obviously the way that we've got the game dynamic now is that it's kind of the same as we've done with Team Yankee. So rather than just moving and firing, you can have different kinds of movement, or different kinds of shooting.
Yeah.
And obviously, to try and remember it all, you've got a little prompt, so you can. It kind of I think, adds another flavour to the game.
Yeah.
Rather than just moving, I go, you go, so you move your stuff and then shoot, and then I move. It kind of gives you an idea. Do I rush from one piece of terrain to another?
Yeah.
Or do I move tactically in a line? And all of it is on those cards, so you can, while you're playing, just kind of quickly refer to it.
Yeah. And this is the genius of Flames of War becoming 4th edition Flames, off the back of Team Yankee. I think the dev team learned so much from Team Yankee. When we were running the boot camp of it, people were absolutely adoring the rules system. They were adoring how the cards work.
Yeah.
You know, everything's there in front of you. It's like, what do I need to hit this tank? Oh, it's there. It's right there as a stat.
Yeah.
And it's great because it simplifies the game down to what myself and Justin say is the rules get out of the way so you can play the game.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've been calling it a beer and pizza game for years. You know, the idea for a good fast play game, which is what we're into. Battlefront, we like games sort of like Risk, where you've got, it's easy to learn the rules, but you'll never master the game. And every time you play a different opponent with a different army, again, everything changes.
Yeah.
And the problem before was trying to, some games, companies have got games where both of you have got your head into the rulebook looking at different
stat lines.
Different stat lines. Yeah. Whereas the idea is that by the time John's picking up his dice to roll, we both know what he's after, and then I can give him a lot of ribbing that there's no way he's ever going to get that amount of sixes, or that, well, actually, mate, in point of fact, you're only going to get ones.
Yeah.
Because it's all on the card, and you can keep the cards at one side of the table. The other thing is, as you get a unit destroyed, it's a reminder, because you then just take the card away.
Yeah.
And it works out your last stand rating, because you can see how many units you've got still active. On the other side of them, when you flip it over, it will show you how you can build that unit and enhance it slightly.
For example,
with other
here,
options.
We'll just take the Panzer IV here. So on the back of the card, you have the unit costs for how many tanks are in each platoon. You have options for it as well. So you have the long barrel or the short barrel 75.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, of course, you have your standard stats. So you have your armor, front, side and rear, and top. You have hit on 4s, you have all the important stuff in here. And keeping it on a card, which is something I find a few game systems moving away from cards, but then they're moving to mobile apps or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's keeping that something in your hand that you can immediately look at.
Yeah.
And a lot of games now are starting to do that, and they're realizing the value of a good stat card, because there used to be games where the stat card would tell you too much.
Yes.
This tells you what you need and what you need only, because if you're playing a basic game, this is all you need.
Absolutely.
Plus the order card.
Yeah.
Everything else, if you want the more advanced rules, you have to go to the book. But once you've started playing, and once you've got used to the game system, and you know those special rules a bit more carefully, you're not referring to the book as much.
I mean, really, the cards, you're right, the cards are kind of just a prompter.
Yeah.
And the other good thing is that in the old days where you'd spend several minutes explaining what you had in your army to your opponent, now you can kind of just lay the cards out, you swap sides of the table, and you don't need to explain it because the other person can see.
Yeah.
I kind of like the old way of building armies with a book. You can't beat, like behind you, a massive stack of books on a shelf. But this is handy because you can flick through the book, decide what you want, and then just pull the cards out of your pack, and then put the stuff into your bag, go down to the club, and away you go.
Yeah.
There's no lugging books around anymore.
And what another reference to Team Yankee, because I've got a nice big British Team Yankee force. I know that when that comes home with me after I've played a game, it goes on a shelf and the stat cards sit beside it.
Yeah.
And I know that the books are on my bookshelf somewhere else. But I know that if I want a pickup game, I have that, grab a book, and away, I'm out the door.
There's no way checking things off of a packing list as we had before. Absolutely.
I can just pick up all the cards, pick up all the models. When I get there, I can then go, right, I want to use this unit, this unit, this unit, and just pick the models out of the stuff I have.
Definitely. It was a very, very good idea. The design team had obviously thought long and hard, tested it with Team Yankee, and it just now, it kind of works. I think it gives it a bit of a dynamic. You can refer to your side of the table, spot what you need, immediately see what you need to roll,
Yeah.
and away you go.
Absolutely. Now, of course, there's models in this box.
Oh,
Are there models in this
yeah.
box?
The only
It's
which one are we
great.
going to go? Are we going to go Soviet or German?
I think we're going to go with what I would consider the oddball out of the lot.
Yeah.
The Valentine.
Yeah,
So we get one Valentine, and it's in this sort of pale green plastic, so it looks different as well as well as different. So you can tell immediately this is the British tank.
But I mean, it's kind of handy because you can just get it straight out of the box, glue it, and using the little entry sheet, away you go, and then worry about painting them later.
Yeah. So fantastic detail on this upper hull. I think this is really, really good. We've got all the rivets in there. We have all the bits for splashboards and stuff like that. And Valentine is such a quirky little vehicle to me because of this stupid reductor gear at the back on the drive wheel. I will never, ever understand why anyone designing a tank or designing an armoured fighting vehicle would say, do you know what that drive needs on the back? That needs a huge big dome with a reduction gear in it.
Yeah.
Because that's not a target at all. And if that is because it's on the outside of the vehicle, if it takes a hit or damage from anything, it's screwed. You've immobilized the vehicle.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Britain.
There was that story again. I think about the filthy fifth Royal Tank Regiment who did really well in North Africa.
Yeah.
At the end of the war, there was allegedly some kind of symposium, and one of these veterans stood up and shouted that I think, in his opinion, I think that anyone that designed our tank should hand the medals back.
Yeah.
They were seriously not impressed. We for the country that JFC Fuller and Basil Little Hart, for all of the aficionados out there, John and I have got a shrine out the back to them. Actually, we put little offerings to them. They invented tank warfare, and we lagged behind. Immediately lagged behind. The Germans were streets ahead, and we were still building probably the larder of the tank world when the others all had Porsches.
Yeah.
Which, although the models look quite good and quite quirky, you're right. It's kind of what were they thinking?
Absolutely. And you see, I always refer to this a lot in some of our tank unboxings. A lot of you guys will know this. But David Fletcher from the Tank Museum, he did a thing with the computer game World of Tanks called Operation Think Tank.
Yeah.
And someone posed him in the audience, someone posed him a question. What are the differences between German tank design and British tank design and manufacture? And he had this beautiful little spiel where it was basically the arms ministry would write up a spec. This spec would be sent to the design team. The design team would design it, and it would look great on this piece of paper. They'd then send it off to the manufacturing plants, say, can you build this? They would then take that spec and look at it and go, well, we don't weld things, so we're just going to rivet that. That doesn't need to be there, so we'll put it there instead. That engine's far too expensive, we'll put this one in instead. And what they ended up having was a tank that came off the production line that was nowhere near what it was when it went in. And you find that with the A13s, the Crusaders, the Valentines. That when they came off the production line in 1942, we're still riveting things, and the rest of the world's scratching their heads going, but we weld everything now because it's safer.
Yeah.
Okay. So, brief disappointment of tank history there. Go.
But I mean, it doesn't detract, though, oddly, from how cool it looks as a mini.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of, especially Valentine's, but they're kind of an odd shape.
Yeah.
But it just looks, when you've got about 10 of them on a table, it just looks...
It looks cool.
Looks cool.
Yeah. So let's move on to the KV, because the KV is a monster of a thing.
These were a shock.
For
the Germans. This really it absolutely rained on their parade when they first came up against these things.
Yeah. They are a fantastic vehicle. They weren't perfect, of course. They had their flaws, but even from a model perspective, look at this. Look at the amount of detail that's in the suspension and stuff. And on the tracks, they have detail all around on the tracks, which is great, because the older kits didn't have that so well. But KV, as a model here, is a little sparse on detail because there just wasn't a lot of stuff on the exterior of a KV. Which leads me into what I think of a KV, and I think they're a terrifying vehicle.
Yeah.
I walked up to the one at Bovington.
It's a beast.
I walked up to it and went, "Oh, you're a lot bigger than I thought you were."
Yeah. I mean, when you see footage of them,
they look like toys.
They look like toys, but when you see one of these things up close and personal, and there's a case of a KV. There's a book that I read many years ago when I used to study the Soviets, and it was called Fighting in Hell. And there's a report. One of these things in a swamp, on the edge of a swamp, held the German attack up for about 5 hours. Yeah. Every time they brought something up to try and counter it, this thing would just destroy it. Yeah. It was that big and that heavy, and it was one of the reasons that they rushed the Tiger into production, because later on we're going to talk, once we've done a game, we're going to talk about where to go next. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, the only way that the German player is going to have any kind of counter for the KV, in my opinion, is a Tiger. I don't know what you think.
I would argue your long barrel Panzer IV, because I think as a historical guy, I would have said if Germany had just kept making those and hadn't bothered with the Panther or the Tiger, hadn't wasted that material and resource and design, they could have just uprated the Panzer IV a bit more here and there and everywhere. Yeah, sure. And you would have had a beautifully refined vehicle that would have done the job and would have been cheaper to manufacture.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, maybe from a gameplay perspective, this is a bit difficult, but reliably, yes, you're going to need an 88 to get through a KV.
Yeah.
Reliably, but a Panzer IV should do the job.
Yeah.
And I might try that out and see if it'll work against.
I mean, this isn't a game about World War II. It's a game with World War II in it, because it's a fun, fast-played game. But the idea is the stuff is pretty much representative of what the vehicle would be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because the vehicle we're going to go on to in a minute. Mm-hmm. You just mentioned the Panzer IV. Now, there's been a lot of questions posed of what was the best tank of World War II. But there are caveats to it. You know, do people mean the one that had the longest life, the one that destroyed the most of the enemy vehicles? Yeah. We've just mentioned the Panzer IV, but the next vehicle that John's going to pull out of the hat now...
You want this one?
I think this is probably in the running. It wasn't pretty by any means.
I would argue that. I would argue that. Have you seen T-34s up close?
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at something like a Tiger, I mean, I remember standing in Bovington on Tiger Day, and the Tiger came in, and a few minutes behind Tiger, T-34 came in. Now, the Tiger crew climbed out, and they looked like Formula One drivers.
Yeah.
You know, hair all swept, clambered out in their overalls. T-34 crumbled into the building and sort of wobbled to a halt, and the guys got out. And I noticed that they had a lump hammer, which they use to put the thing into first gear, because and I just mentioned to one of the guys at work, saying, what's going on there? And he said, well, the reason that the guy that's driven the T-34 is sweating profusely and is covered in grime, and there were two of them in the driving position instead of just one, the guy that's just driven Tiger in has just driven effectively a tracked Porsche.
Yeah.
The guy that's just driven the T-34 in has just driven a piece of manky farm machinery that needs two people to get the thing into first gear with a hammer.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not beautiful from the operational perspective.
But it did its job.
But it did its job.
Yeah.
Absolutely did its job. And you guys that are familiar with Flames of War will be very familiar with the look of a T-34 in plastic, which is still a fantastic looking model. And of course you have your turret options. You have your 76 down at the bottom, and you have your 85 up here as well. On the other sprue, we have all the various gun barrels, because there's options for the 76, the 57, and the 85 as well, I believe. There's quite a lot of gun barrels in there.
Yeah.
And of course the rest of the stuff, we have the external fuel drums, stowage bins, gun mantlet, and of course the tracks.
I mean, we mentioned it in the book video about this. This was an arms race. The Eastern Front at this period of the war was an arms race. Now, as you'll see from this, from the turret rings and the size of the turrets here, the Soviets, when they designed this vehicle, I think it was it 36, 37, they first came up with the idea?
Yeah.
Whoever designed it came up with a very clever forethought that he knew the vehicle would end up having to be upgunned, So they put a huge turret ring on it with a 2-man turret, because they knew that at some stage when a bigger gun came along, it would need, it's just a matter of physics, that you'd need a larger diameter turret for the recoil of the gun. Yeah. And that is, I think, one of the reasons that T-34 lasted as long as it did.
Yeah.
Because they were able to add a bigger gun, a little bit heavier armour, and upgun it from, as we just said, that from the 76 short barrel, which was the first vehicle,
iteration, yeah,
to the 85. I mean, let's face it, when the 85 trundled off of the production line and hit the Germans, it was a shock, because it wasn't a case of having the KV trundling slowly. These things were doing fast speeds for their day, cross country, but it had a massive gun on it, which was going through literally everything the Germans had.
Yeah.
Awesome model, though. We are now able, with the tooling, to get really, really good kits out with a lot of detail on them, which is cool. But yeah, you're itching for the... Yeah, I thought you were going to go for that.
We're going to move on to the German side, and we're going to start with the Panzer IV. So here is our sprue for Panzer IV. Again, there will be optional parts in here. So we have the F2 barrel and the standard 75, which is essentially a tank revised version of the Pak 40.
Yeah.
So we have turret bits and bobs all over the place, of course. Let's see what the others... Oh, this is the single sprue. So this, short barrel 75's up there as well. So the pilots are two. So
we've got the opposite, because the T-34 was designed for just one job. The Panzer IV, the Soviet the German design was that they would have two vehicles.
Yeah.
The Panzer III was an anti-tank vehicle that would fire, started off with a 50mm gun, that would take out other tanks. But they had an infantry support vehicle, which is the 4, that fired a destructive HE shell that they bring up to fire at strong points. Quite effectively. They then realised when they hit the Eastern Front proper that really it was going to be a case that the Panzer IV had to be the workhorse.
Yeah.
So we were seeing a lot of other guns. The barrels were longer. We then saw literally they shoehorned the Pak 40, which was a monstrous anti-tank weapon, into the turret, which suddenly transformed that into a tank killer. The poor old Panzer III was relegated to escort duties for Tiger, which we'll talk about in another video. But what we've got in the rules now is that when we build a Tiger company, with Tiger platoons, for each Tiger taken, we can add a Panzer III. But they don't count against the morale of the unit. But again, kind of puts the flavour in.
They're just ancillary vehicles that were brought along to help with the escort. Speaking of Panzer IIIs, we'll get a look at a Panzer III. So there should be a lot more options here. So we have the L model applique armor. We have the gun mantlets back there as well. We have the short 50mm. We have the short 75, because that was an option eventually put onto them as well. When they came off Panzer IVs, they had all these surplus short 75s, so they went on the Panzer IIIs and they went on the half tracks, the 250s and 251s. Then down here we have the long 50, which is really Panzer III's zenith in its tank killing capability, because this wasn't a bad gun. But again, when we were coming across T-34s and stuff like that, that's where it began to struggle.
Especially with the sloping of armour, which hadn't been seen before, and suddenly rounds that should have penetrated armour of that thickness were bouncing off. And again, it caused a bit of a headache for the Germans initially.
So you find this this rapid prototyping and this rapid modification of tanks. So, like, as we said, Panzer III first got the long barrel 50. And then when the Panzer IV started to take over as the main battle tank, in inverted commas, because it wasn't a main battle tank, don't consider it that ever, then all the surplus guns went to Panzer III. So it still had a battlefield role, but they kind of swapped.
I mean, we've now introduced heat ammunition, which, especially for the Soviets, it means that over 16 inches, you're not adding one to the armour value. But it kind of highlights the effectiveness of these weapons. Suddenly, we've got a longer barrel, more destructive ammunition, and it completely twisted the nature of the tactics on its head.
Yeah.
On the head.
Yeah.
But the kit, hopefully the kits will kind of bear this out with the fact that you can open up the box and pick which one of those vehicles you're going to go with.
Yeah. And also just a very quick mention as well. I just noticed, because there's an extra sprue in here.
Yeah.
So there's tank crew sprues. So there's commander sprues, but we've seen these before, I believe. So a little square with some guys in there for, I think, is it both? Yeah, Russian and German sprues, obviously. So, but I like this. I like this a lot. This is an earlier model T-34-76 turret, which I assume we could probably shoehorn as your platoon command or something like that, or just a random vehicle in the platoon. Yeah.
Because remember, this is the transition stage. We're getting to the point where older vehicles are being phased out, and the Soviets really, when we get to the point where battalions are being wiped out within a matter of weeks. So they'll literally, new vehicles will arrive, and they'll be in platoons with older vehicles that haven't been destroyed yet.
Yeah. So that was your introduction to the Stalingrad, or the Battle of Stalingrad box set. Wasn't a lot of talking about the game, to be honest. There was a lot of talking about the vehicles, but what do you expect? I'm the presenter, and we have a Battlefront guy here, so of course we're going to be talking about.
But that's the whole nature of that box set. Is it allows, rather than us sticking just
say, for example, two
platoons
Panzer IVs,
two Panzer IVs
or two T-34s.
What we wanted to do was include in the box a load of options.
Yeah.
So that if you're new and coming into the hobby, there's enough information there for you to be able to select. And if you're a more advanced player or more experienced player, now if you've been dribbling over certain configurations of vehicle, you've got them all on the one sprue. There's no trying to add extra parts. It's all there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, thank you very much for watching. As always, get your comments in below to let us know what you think of this box set, and we will see you again very soon.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now, and be sure to check out beastsofwar.com for the latest gaming news and gaming let's plays. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.